So our time in Potosi had come to an end, and from there it was off to the delightful city of Sucre. I am aware that's way too many S's to start off this episode. But Sucre is an incredible city nestled pretty much in the middle of Bolivia. We're at the south central part, to be honest, just under 3,000 metres in height. It's also famed for being one of the best preserved colonial cities in the Western Hemisphere. And its architectural heritage and the fact that it is the constitutional capital of Bolivia means it's an incredibly well-preserved city in general. It also has really low crime rates, which make it quite popular, not just with the gringos, but also Bolivians themselves. Now, it's a fun pub quiz question, if you get back to pub quizzing, and one that we've had before, which is, what is the highest capital city in the world? Now, normally, it would be La Paz, which is also in Bolivia. However, there are debates about whether Sucre is the actual capital city of Bolivia or not. So, what is the highest capital city in the world? Chances are you're going to get an answer that is La Paz, which is technically correct. But if the person asking the question believes that Sucre is the capital of Bolivia, then your answer would be Quito, which is the capital of Uruguay, Ecuador even. Hopefully that makes sense. But side note, let's get back onto Sucre. Sucre is a wonderful, wonderful place. Loads to see and do. As it's the constitutional capital of Bolivia, you can imagine that there are quite a few funky buildings there. The Supreme Court is based there, amongst other, impressive buildings. We got there, we just checked into the hotel. Can't remember the name of the place where we stayed, but it was quite a popular gringo hotel as such. And the great thing about it was that there was a whole wide range of people. We were starting to get to the point of travelling where, as I've described at the start of the travelling, we kind of went up in a fish hook. So we started in Rio, we went down, curved our way across, and then started heading due north. Well, Sucre and La Paz turned out to be where a lot of people travelling south, we would cross each other. So some of the stories that people were sharing over beers at breakfast in general, and watching afternoon football, some of the stories that people were sharing were fantastic, because you've got this blend of people passing on information from places that they'd already been to, and the same happening from people that have been coming up in the other direction. Overall, Sucre is a wonderful place. We spent a few nights there, usual stuff, had a look at the local parks, looked at the Mercado Central. At this stage it was still Russ, Anna, Aaron and myself. We'd done quite a bit of walking, ate quite a lot of soup, much to Aaron's chagrin. But we visited the Palacete del Guerrero on top of a hill, palace on top of a hill, as well as the Monasterio de la Recoleta, which is a monastery on top of a hill as well, both overlooking cemeteries. We also checked out the Cementerio General, the general cemetery. And again, the reasons for that were, number one, it was something to do. Number two, given the climate in Sucre, it's relatively temperate all year long, so it made for pleasant strolls, pleasant walkings, and also the fact that both cemeteries are on top of hills, so you could easily look down at the La Casa Viejo, the old town, the markets, supermarkets, colonial buildings, etc, etc, etc. There's a few other things going on in Sucre. I think there must have been some government meetings or important people visiting, as there was quite a few times where the roads were completely closed off to traffic, loads of police presence, private cars were there, flashing lights and bits and bobs like that. So added a bit of spice to our time in Sucre. The great thing about being in Latin America is that you're a few hours behind GMT, British time, which makes watching football fantastic, especially if, as what we were doing a few days, we would take some time out to watch European or Champions League football. Now, rather it kick off at 7:45 as we'd be used to in the UK, over there it was kicking off at 3:45, 4:45 in the afternoon. Absolutely fantastic. So we spent a couple of days watching, one day after the other. We used the afternoon time to watch a bit of football, A bad move as Real Madrid dicked on Liverpool, much to most people's pleasure in the bar. Not good. All that being said, highly recommend if you're ever over in Sucre, do check it out. I believe at the time we were there as well, there was a building, forget the name of it, there was a building that basically had one of the, supposedly one of the original copies of Bolivian independence, which was signed by Simon Bolivar. So that was quite cool to see in that building complex. That was pretty awesome to see. I'm not sure that'd be there anymore, but you know, it is what it is. Talking of Simon Bolivar, getting into Bolivar region now, incredibly famous liberator of South America. Of course, there were others, but for some reason it's his name that really sticks out, especially when you get into this part of the world. And fun fact for you, Simon Bolivar is the only person in the world to have two countries named after him. I'll tell you what they are at the end of the episode. From Sucre, it was then a case of going to La Paz. And La Paz, as we've already established, is incredibly high. It is quite possibly the capital of Bolivia, but we'll leave that debate for the Bolivians to debate amongst themselves. We didn't really know what to expect in La Paz. We decided to base ourselves there for a week. We knew that the Death Road was available to cycle down. We were looking to book ourselves on a tour. But apart from that, we didn't really know what to expect in La Paz. We were heading there just because it was on the way, just because we'd heard very good things about it, and just because it's Bolivia, it's relatively inexpensive in general. And when we approached La Paz, we approached it from the south, and in order to get into La Paz, you end up at the top of a valley. Now, at the top of the valley, if you're lucky enough when you're sitting on the bus, you can see a couple of things. Number one, you can see La Paz in general, but beyond that, you can see El Alto. Now, El Alto is, you know, the flats, it's the high, and it basically creates this humongous, incredible valley. The roads to get into La Paz are, surprise, surprise, incredibly winding, as you would imagine. Just a phenomenal place to see from the top. So we're glad that we saw that view from where we did. Once we checked into the hotel, or checked into the hostel in this case, just literally the first day was about having a beer or two, having a walk around. And we'd done something in La Paz that we hadn't done in any other city. We booked in for a guided walking tour. And we thought, yes, we'd visited a lot of cities before. We hadn't actually thought of doing a guided walking tour. For some reason, it's not something that had been brought up in conversation. But we decided in La Paz to do a walking tour. And the walking tour was cool. It was cool for a couple of reasons. Number one, that the two ladies running the tour were incredibly informative. They were quite attractive. Also very, very useful people in terms of not just giving you a lot of information about the city itself, but about the people, what's going on here, what's going on there, etc., etc. Something else that is synonymous with Latin America is human sacrifice. Now, whether it be the Incas, as we were pretty much in Inca territory, well, whether it be the Aztecs up in Mexico or the Maya around Central America, human sacrifice seemed to be quite a popular thing to do. Not just necessarily in modern eras, but certainly in years gone by. It was a question that was brought up on the walking tour. Apparently it's still a thing to do nowadays, where they will, and this is what the ladies that were running the walking tour hinted at, that they would still commit a human sacrifice before major buildings were built, and the body of the person would be buried within the foundations of the building. Now, they didn't categorically say that this definitely did happen. Chances are it might not happen, but the inclination that we came away with was that there is a good chance that these things do happen. She went into details about how they would normally find homeless people, offer them Bolivian miners drink, which remember is at 97% proof stuff, or 97% ABV at least, and getting them absolutely blind drunk. They'd make sure that this person had no family at all, whether that's through government records or whatever, and they would pretty much put them to sleep, shall we say, in the foundations, cover them in concrete, job done. That's our understanding, and I know if you're listening to this, you're thinking, Rob, that sounds absolute bullshit, it sounds batshit crazy, I don't agree with what you're saying. Hey, don't shoot the messenger, I'm just passing on the information that we were told, which we thought was quite intriguing, to say the least. The walking tour was also good fun, as we were face to face with a lot of cholitas. Now, cholitas, it's difficult to describe a cholita. Basically, they're indigenous women in Bolivia. They pretty much do most things. They are incredibly strong people, not just in terms of mental strength, but in terms of physical strength as well. Now, we did have a laugh on one of the days before we'd done the walking tour, that we were walking up a hill to get to the meeting point. And we were still struggling with the altitude a little bit. All four of us were still struggling with the altitude. So we were taking our time, stopping, starting. And we saw a cholita that, and you'll know what a cholita looks like as well. Basically, normally have plaited hair, almost like a bowler hat. And they're always carrying a bunch of stuff on their backs. They are, with all due respect, they are at the time, almost like the backbone of the Bolivian economy, in all fairness. Anyway, we were stopping and starting up this hill, and we saw this cholita literally with what can only be described as probably a couple of crates of drinks on her. Whether they were tins of Coke or tins of beer doesn't really matter. Literally steamrolling past us right up the hill. Now, we were laughing just at our ineptitude at the time. But yeah, this woman absolutely steamrolled past us. And we were just completely gobsmacked. Not the fact that she was walking up the hill, but the fact she was carrying crates of drinks. So it must have been weighing her down, and she was just like a freight train straight up the hill. So that was a bit of a laugh, to say the least. But on the walking tour, the ladies doing the walking tour started mentioning more about cholitas, their importance to Bolivian society and bits and pieces like that. And they said, in Bolivia, it's quite common for people to judge other people by the strength of their calf muscles, how they look. So me being me, I was like, I'm pretty sure I've got good calf muscles. They offered if anyone would like to flex a calf muscle to show a cholita. No one did, apart from myself. I happened to be wearing shorts at the time. So I said, yes, I will flex my calf muscle. Bear in mind, most of the time when we're in places, we're walking anyway, I flexed my calf muscle, and even a couple of the cholitas there in the little market were made some fun noises. Ooh, see, that was great. So I've got recognition from cholitas that my calf muscles are really good. They still are. So yeah, very happy with that. Thank you, Bolivia. I feel welcome. In another life, I will become a cholita, thanks to my calf muscles. The walking tour is fascinating, and I would recommend that if you're ever in a city, you're in a place that you're not too familiar with, even if it's in the UK, in all fairness, do go on one of the free walking tours. On a side note, one of the best ones I've ever been on was when I was with my dad and we were in Munich. Hilariously so, the gentleman running the one in Munich was an Irish guy, ridiculously knowledgeable. We've been living in Germany for a long, long time. At the end of the day, for a 3-hour tour, I think we ended up paying, or donating, should we say, €10 each at the end. So, I mean, they could be a very inexpensive way of seeing a place, but also getting a hell of a lot of knowledge about a place as well. So go check out some walking tours. There were parts of La Paz that were a bit of a blur, a lot of drinking. We'd also been told about Route 36, which the polite way of putting it was that Route 36 was basically a big cocaine den. Cocaine, now you're in the area where the coca plant is being produced quite frequently. A lot of people chew it for the effect that it gives, especially in Latin America. And the reason for that is it helps you to deal with altitude sickness, basically. But of course, the byproduct, as we would know, is cocaine. Route 36 I was determined to go to. I'd heard some great stories Mate AD, yes, that AD from Paraguay had told us, this is where you need to go, this is what you need to do. I was buzzing, I was ready for it. And then when it got round to that evening, when I wanted to go, basically ended up in the hostel drinking loads of beer instead. Didn't go, decided against it at the very last minute. So I've got no idea what Route 36 was like, but AD's experience when he went there said it was a bit seedy because you turn up, you are basically opposite, this shack in the middle of nowhere. You have to knock on the door, say a password, and then you get let in. And then again, under the influence of the white powder, who knows what happens there. But AD had a good time. We didn't end up going, unfortunately. But, not because I'm endorsing drugs or anything like that. It's almost a case of, when in Rome. So we didn't end up going to that. But what we had done is we had booked on to cycle the death road. And we'll touch on that in the next episode. But just summarising this one up, a couple of other great things that we did in La Paz. By the way, I should mention on the walking tour, one of the main prisons in La Paz is pretty much right in the centre of town. And you're always told not to go too near the prison, even on the outside, because people are chucking drugs over to one another. Now, we thought this was a bit stupid. It's like, whatever, not going to happen. But I shit you not, on the walking tour, when we were near the prison, like in the plaza opposite, we saw this bag of stuff get launched from what was inside the walls, inside the prison, just went flying straight over the walls and landed smack in the middle of the road. Unbelievable. So yeah, all that they were saying was completely true. Smack in the middle of this road, what must have been a big bag of coke, just there, and we couldn't believe what we saw. But no, it really did happen. Other things that we did in La Paz, apart from the usual amount of drinking, the Palacio Quemado, the Presidential Palace. La Paz is also home to the largest urban cable car network in the world. And one evening we took one of the cable cars up to top of hill, saw the sunset over La Paz, and then took the cable car back down. It's also got quite a few funky walkways. Again, given the fact that La Paz is pretty much in a valley, there's a lot of winding roads. They basically built quite a funky public walkway where you can walk for a couple of kilometres and you're on this, this elevated platform, pretty much walking over the roads, if that makes sense. That was an awesome thing to do, and that, again, was a great way to have a look at, quite a bit of the city as well. In answer to the question that we asked about 5 minutes into the podcast, Simon Bolivar is the only person in the world to have two countries named after him. You probably worked out that number one was Bolivia. But secondly, is Venezuela. Yes, it is Venezuela, which is, thanks to, I believe it was Hugo Chavez, is officially now known as the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. So there you are, named after Simon Bolivar himself. So the answer, Simon Bolivar has two countries named after him. That is Venezuela, which is the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and of course Bolivia. That's La Paz. That was that in a nutshell. Next, we're on to Death Road.